Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Thankful to have you here. And we're back in the deep end of the alligator pit where it gets treacherous and dangerous. So we're going to head to the green box for this episode. And we're going to talk about one of the paradoxes of life. All of us have heard the term, or heard the statement rather, laugh now, cry later, or cry now, laugh later. In this statement, we're talking about the archetypes of the so-called nerd and the so-called gangster or street guy. And although in North America we have people of various ethnicities and nationalities, and I'm pretty sure that these archetypes exist in all ethnic groups, but right now I'm talking about the so-called black community in particular, because I'm going to give you some of my own experiences and observations with this phenomenon. So even if you're not a so-called black person, you can still relate to this because I'm pretty sure it shows up somehow in your neighborhood or in your neck of the woods, rather. So, for example, they had a movie come out in the 1980s called Revenge of the Nerds. And this movie basically was about, the so-called Caucasian nerd and the so-called cool jock, in school. All right. So this phenomenon isn't nothing new. It transcends race and nationality. And we should all be able to relate to it and get some enlightenment from this. But the prelude to this video is to understand that the human being and the human personality is a very, very complex, and it's a very, very diverse phenomenon, the human personality. And taking myself, for example, I've said this in previous videos, but a lot of what makes up my personality, when I was growing up, it came from three different areas. So I had three different types of friends and people I would hang out with that would all relate to different parts of my personality. So growing up, I had my athletic friends, guys that I played, recreational AAU basketball with, middle school and high school basketball with. So I had my athletic and my sport friends, guys that played sports that I would hang out with. The brothers that were from the streets, a little more gritty, a little more gangster, that militant, hardcore, Viking-like aggression that I have, I can relate to those people. So that was one of my friend groups. And the last group were the guys that were into academics, education. They liked learning. They were intellectual. They liked to challenge themselves mentally. And I could relate a lot to those guys because I was one of those children that, I was into school and education for learning. It wasn't really about getting good grades to me. It was more about actually learning because I loved strengthening my brain. And I learned very early on in life that, having knowledge is a form of a weapon. So the more equipped I am mentally, the more I can talk about various topics and subjects, the stronger I'll be, And I caught on to that pretty quick. So I always had a love for school, just as a personal individual. I didn't really need any incentive to do my schoolwork and stuff like that. I just had a natural love for it. So having this kind of a complex personality, what it did was it allowed me to be in different environments with different types of people. And I also served as somewhat of a bridge between two types of people in the so-called black community. And that was the so-called nerd and the so-called gangster. Usually these two groups don't interact with each other and they don't intermix. So think about on the playground growing up. You may have the nerds or, the guys over in their section doing their own thing. And the street guys, they over in another section doing their own thing. And both groups, may have a negative opinion of each other. The nerd guys think the street people are stupid and think that usually they don't have, mental capability. And then the street guys think that the nerds aren't quote unquote cool, and they not hip or, stuff like that, right? So I was somewhat of an outlier and I was unique because, I was able to relate to all of them. And a part of me, represented all of them. So I was able to go between these worlds and observe, how both saw each other. And as I started to age and grow older in life, I started to see the outcome that both experienced. All right. Now, me personally, growing up in Riverdale, a lot of the older street guys that I was around, they I think they noticed this about me as well. And people are gonna deal with you based on how you are as an individual. If they see that you a follower, then they're gonna treat you like a follower. They're gonna send you on dummy missions, and stuff like that. But if they see you stand up, you willing to tell them no, and you even willing to fight them, they're gonna have a certain amount of respect for you, and they're gonna treat you, much different than they may treat the other young guys. So a lot of the older guys, whether they was 220, Southside Mafia or whatever, they treated me much different, I noticed. And they were always encouraging. So I just give you two examples. I can remember one time I was over to Brother Bama's apartment because me and his younger brother were cool. And, I would always hang out over there. And when I was at Bama's apartment, some of the older Southside Mafia guys came over to see him and visited him and stuff, and were talking and hanging out. And I remember we were just all in there conversing and stuff. And during this time, this is when I was getting ready to transition out of high school. So I was thinking a lot about college and, just advancing and evolving my life, taking things to the next level. And I can remember me and the brother Slap Rock were, we were talking and I was telling him like, that I'm looking forward to this college thing and just seeing what, life had to offer, taking things to the next level. You know what I'm saying? And even a lot of stuff we was doing in the streets, if there was a legitimate way that I could, figure out how to make money, then I want to discover that. I want to investigate that. I want to look into that. And I remember the brother Slap Rock being very, very encouraging, telling me to stay down. He was inspirational. He was motivational. He was telling me to stick with the school work, stick with the education. And, and me being one of the guys that, I'll be able to take us all to the next level, with what I'm doing, because I maybe go to certain places that they won't go. Rest in power to the brother AB. He was another OG Mafia guy. And I remember visiting him in Clayton County Jail once. And this is right when I was, thinking about what I wanted to major in college. And I already knew I wanted to do business, but I didn't really know what accounting was. But it was interesting to me. And I remember when I was visiting him, and we were talking on the phone and stuff like that. And he came in with the red jumpsuit, I remember. And, I was letting him know I had just did my final exams and stuff, and I was just excited about college. And he was also very encouraging and motivational and inspirational and telling me to stay focused, telling me to stay out the way and stuff like that, and, and to become something. So a lot of the older gangsters in the streets, I don't want the people to get a wrong impression of them that, that they always sending young guys to, do dummy missions and crash out. They didn't treat me like that. But a lot of the reasons why, I think, is because, once again, they saw I was my own man. I wasn't a follower. And I accepted every part of my personality. Like, a lot of them knew that I was into schoolwork and playing basketball and, sports and stuff like that. They knew I wasn't just locked into the streets, and they respected that I didn't mind embracing that part of myself. Whereas with other people, I saw them, sending them on dummy missions, them folks crashing out and all type of other stuff, right? So another thing that I used to see when I was young growing up in the streets is that, and the nerd guys saw this too. The nerd guys may have thought, man, the street guys, they getting all the girls, so that was one of the big issues. When you a young guy and you going through puberty and stuff, you want to interact with the young teenage females. You want to interact with, the women or the females that are riding the bus with you, that may be in the cafeteria, may be in gym. You may have your little middle school or high school crush or something like that, right? So a lot of the times the nerds, they would like these girls, but they would be probably a little intimidated to approach them or whatever the case may be. And one of the, horrors that these nerds had to go through is that they would sit back and just see the gangsters running through all the females. They would see the gangsters, running trains on their school crushes or some girl you want to take to the prom or the dance, but you seeing her hanging out with the gangster guys. Like I said, literally having trains ran on them, being passed around, what I'm saying, and stuff like that. And this was intimidating to a lot of the nerd guys. They would see, sometimes in my neighborhood and other neighborhoods I would go to in Riverdale, and I didn't know this until I got a little older, but some of my nerd friends, they would tell me, they would be like, man, yeah, when we would see y'all all on the block and y'all up there mobbing or doing whatever it is y'all doing, some guys smoking, drinking, playing music or whatever it is, that they didn't really want to come over there like that. They would try to stick to where they was at in the neighborhood, or stick to like their own little territory and environment. And like I said, I was the bridge between the two. So a lot of the times I would, go to where the nerd guys are and bring them over to we at. Or sometimes I would take some of my gangster friends and we would go hang out with the nerd guys. So, and then also too, I always looked at it like, man, we all one people. So it did kind of hurt me when I grew older and some of the older nerd guys told me that, because I didn't know that growing up. You know what I'm saying? I didn't know that they may have been intimidated by them, but I can understand that, because them guys were aggressive. And a lot of them were violent, and you just may not know what them dudes' temperature is, so you just stay away from them. But anyway, so the nerd guys, they sitting back, they seeing all the girls hanging around them and stuff like that, and it not only is it intimidating, but it may make the nerd guys question themselves. It may make them feel like, man, like, some of them may have felt like it's not quote unquote fair, or whatever may have come to their minds, right? And they saw this, they saw all the attention that them guys was getting. And I'm gonna also say this too, in the so-called black community, the street gangster, or the quote unquote thug guy, he is more embraced than the nerd. I mean, even today in 2025, you know what I'm saying? Like, just look at all these so-called drill rappers. Like, you could take a guy like the brother from Chicago that's deceased, King Von. Like, even to this day, if you go on Instagram or YouTube or any of these guys' comment sections, the women love the gangster guys. They love the gang members. They love the drill niggas. You know what I'm saying? And that's why a lot of guys who may have a nerd aspect, or maybe they liked education, but when they were young, they didn't embrace every aspect, every 360 degree of their personality. They only either embraced the street part, or they put on an image and put on a costume and put on a performance to look like they was a street guy. But a lot of it really was just to get females and just to get, sexual opportunities. I'll give you another, enlightening piece of information. But I can remember when I got older, one of the older brothers from my neighborhood, I remember he was talking to me and I mean, because me and I mean, we were like some of the younger people in the neighborhood. And I remember him talking to us and telling us basically that y'all do know that a lot of those conflicts back then, niggas was fighting over females. You know what I'm saying? And at first I'm like, nah, man, that can't be true. But when I started to think about it and he broke it all down, I'm like, damn, man, you right. They a lot of them guys were fighting over females. It was just back then I didn't know that. I'm thinking that, it's conflicts because maybe somebody got tried, or, and then you see your homeboy getting into a fight or something like that, or you heard somebody did something to your homeboy or whatever it is, or so you on go mode. Like, you ain't even really looking at the reason, you know what I'm saying? But no, they were fighting over females, because at that time period, I mean, I was so young, I wasn't having sex. You know what I'm saying? Like, back then, maybe a kiss on a little female or feel on her or something like that, but I wasn't engaging in no sexual intercourse in no middle school and stuff like that. But a lot of guys were. So when you're starting to get your dick wet, this has a certain emotional connection to it. So now you're having these rivals with other guys, because either y'all sleeping with the same female, or, one guy want to sleep with the female, but she dealing with this guy or something like that. So next thing you know, it's this whole big gang conflict. And these battles now happening in the streets. You know what I'm saying? But you're not even really knowing that the underlying reason is because these niggas fighting over pussy. And I ain't gonna lie, when I was in my early teenage years, I didn't know guys was doing that. I didn't know guys did that. I didn't know guys was using the streets to get females. I thought you just got a female based on your personality, or, sometimes like if you got the cool shoes or you got a cool jacket or something like that. I knew females like that, but very early on, I didn't know that dudes was using the gangster thing to get women or get female attention. And I didn't really even know the females was into that. You know what I'm saying? But it was true. And it is true to this day. And the nerd guys, because they were on the outside looking in, I think they were able to catch this. And, and it's just facts, right? So these guys were laughed at. Some of them got picked on. I can remember we would be at Sparkles skating rink, which was like a teenage hangout spot and stuff like that. Even though we would be up there on the gang shit and the street shit, but everybody up there wasn't on that. Some people were up there literally just to skate or literally just to hang out and eat pizza. Or, I remember at Sparkles, we had the arcades. Like, salute to all my niggas that know about that Mortal Kombat 2. You know what I'm saying? They used to be at Sparkles where, goddamn it, as soon as you put the game on, you put your quarter in, and Kentaro, he the first motherfucker you gotta fight. It's like, damn, it ain't like this on the video game on Sega. How the hell Kentaro the first nigga? Y'all must be doing this shit so niggas get their ass whooped and y'all can get all our money. But anyway, yeah, some folks going to Sparkles just to kick it. But, a lot of times when we would be at Sparkles or over at Skate Zone or Skate Town, you know what I'm saying, over on Old National, which is Hit Squad's territory. I'm pretty sure this happened over there too, because I used to get my haircut at the CNC barbershop, and it was right by Skate Town off of Old National. So all my niggas from College Park, Old National, you know what I'm talking about if you really was out there. But, and when the gang, I'll admit to y'all, when the gang guys came and the street guys, they would be in there mobbing, you know what I'm saying? Like knocking people out, they would pick on certain guys and little stuff like that. Like, yeah, these things did happen. And this shit was a form of terrorism to the nerds because it used to throw off a lot of the little fun they was having. Like, we would be at the Riverdale movie theater, or we would be at AMC 24 or some movie theater in Clayton County. And the same things would happen there. Like, we would come and, I would see the different nerd guys. Some of them I may have went to school with, or, stuff like that. And then they get to seeing us and they like, man, and they got their heads down and they walking the other way and stuff like that. So the street guys did bring, a lot of negativity to the environment that we had to share with the nerd guys. But the street guys weren't really aware of this. And some of the ones that were aware of it, they didn't even give a fuck, because they living in that space and time, and not really knowing that one day it's a possibility that the tables can turn. So early on, you can say that the so-called street guys, quote unquote, were winning. They were getting all the females, they were getting the attention. All the other, some of the guys in the school wanted to be like them. They were quote unquote popular and notable names and stuff like that. So, at the time, the nerd man felt like, man, I ain't really winning. You know what I'm saying? And, school sucks, life sucks. Like, some of them may have thought stuff like that, right? So now we're going to fast forward to, the late teens, 20s, and early 30s, right? And what happens? So what tends to happen is that, you progress through your middle school and your high school career. And once it gets to be about 10th, 11th grade, a lot of the street guys, they start dropping out of school. Because a lot of them weren't really into school anyway. A lot of them weren't really into learning. When we would go to school and they didn't have no book bag. They didn't have no books in their book bag and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? Because I remember always roasting them. The nerd guys weren't going to roast the street guys because they were scared of getting shot or beat up or something like that. But I always roasted them because I would be with them. And I'm looking and noticing like, damn, bro, you ain't got no books. Damn, bro, ain't nothing in your book bag. We in class, like you skipping class. You're not doing the homework. Like, damn, bro, you done got kept back in 9th grade homeroom like 2-3 times and stuff like that. So I used to clown them on that. And, and they didn't give a fuck, you know what I'm saying? Because they weren't at school for that. They was at school for really everything but learning, right? It was really to socialize. It was a form of Six Flags to them. And I knew in my heart of hearts, that one day this is going to catch up with y'all. Because another thing that was interesting is that, and, I don't know where this elder is. Hopefully he still is alive and healthy. But we had an elder in my neighborhood called Mr. E. And Mr. E, he was an older man. At that time period in the early 2000s, when I was in my early teens, I think Mr. E was older than my mother. He probably was around my father's age. So Mr. E could be in his 70s now. But Mr. E was one of those elders that, tried to always, help the young brothers in the streets and try to steer us on the right direction. And in Palisades, it was so many of us from different age ranges that, we were the ones he was trying to put on the right path. So he would be that elder where he see us all in the street playing basketball. I remember he would always bring us some sodas to drink. You know what I'm saying? He used to always have those packs of soda and they would be hot as hell, but man, we would be so appreciative of it. And then, he an elder and sometimes he would get the basketball and try to come out there with us. And, a nigga like me, the first thing I'm trying to do is cross his ass up or dunk on him or something like that. But he always interacted with us. And another thing he used to do too is he used to give like little book reports and little contests in the neighborhood. And he would give us all like a subject to write on. He would say something about, I want y'all to write a 2-page book report on maybe what it is you want to be when you grow up or something like that, right? And you know, and whoever had the best one, he would give you $5 or $10 or something like that, right? And I remember a lot of the guys in the neighborhood just kind of laughing at him and not doing it. But me and a few of the other guys did. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, because I'm looking at it like, shit, it's $5. Like, nigga, I'm finna go to the beauty supply store. I'm finna go to Dollar General, or nigga, this $5, nigga, we finna go to the movies or something. So I was quick to get it, you know. And I'm always doing the book reports, you know what I'm saying? Me and a couple other brothers, and you know, I'm getting that little $5, $10 or whatever. But when I look back, what he was doing was he was challenging us to think, and he was making us look deeper into the future to see that, you know, one day you guys are gonna be older, and you know, you need to prepare for that future right now. So a lot of the things that if you had a good parent, Mr. E's message to you was reflecting what your parents told you. You know what I'm saying? So he was that elder in our neighborhood, and I thank the Most High for having him around when we were young. But like I said, a lot of the guys, they weren't really into that. So these dudes weren't really reading books. These dudes weren't really doing their homework. They weren't doing the mathematics and stuff like that. And then, you know, because of the gang shit, when it got real crazy, a lot of them started to get kicked out of school. They got kicked out of Point South. They got kicked out of Riverdale. They got kicked out of Mundy's Mill. They got kicked out of Jonesboro. You know what I'm saying? Now they got to go to alternative school. And some of them got kicked out of Clayton County schools, period. And now they out of school, and now you get deeper into the streets. You get deeper into thugging. You get deeper into the gangsterism. So some of the crimes and stuff that they commit, they start getting stronger. You know, so now niggas starting to do a little bit more robbing. You know what I'm saying? More shootouts. And also something else that happens too is that if you skip in school and you're not in school no more, now you're engaging in more sexual activity. So now you're a teenager, and now you get involved in teenage pregnancies and stuff like that. So this is the type of stuff that started to happen like in our mid to late teens, right? Now, while this is going on, the nerd guy, you know, he's still doing this school thing. Then eventually he graduates high school. He goes on to college. So now we all in our early 20s, late teens, right? Something else that I noticed is that when I got in my late teens, I would say like my freshman, sophomore year of college. So that means 17, 18, 19 years old, right? A lot of my homeboys during this time period that were from the streets, a lot of them started to go to prison. You know, a lot of them started to go to prison, going to the county jail, and started to get these felonies on their report card, you know? And a lot of the nerd guys, of course, a lot of them starting to go to college, or maybe getting some kind of a trade skill set, and they starting to advance their lives a little bit more, right? So now you in your late teens, early 20s. So now, boom, you go through your 20s. Now in your mid 20s, a lot of the nerd guys, they graduate in college now. You know, they've learned a little bit more. They've developed a little bit. And now they going out into the world, whereas a lot of the street guys, they've been pretty much doing the same thing since we was teenagers. Nothing really has changed. A lot of them probably in some of the same environments, but not much has advanced with them, right? So now you're in your mid 20s. But when you're in your 20s is really just a glorified version of your teenage years. You ain't really no man yet, all right? So now you move on into your late 20s, early 30s, mid 30s, right? So now you're in your early adulthood years, okay? And now a lot of the street guys, they starting to realize, you know, a lot of that stuff that they used to do or that they were doing, it has put a hindrance on them developing and growing as a man. Because like I say, a lot of them may be in prison. Like a lot of my homeboys, they was in prison they whole 20s. Yeah, so that means like, I remember when I was 19, yeah, a lot of my homeboys, and some of them still in there now, they didn't get out until they was in like their early 30s. So literally that whole decade of our 20s, they was in prison, like the state prison, Georgia State Prison, right? So during this time period, you're supposed to be developing and getting different skill sets needed in the world of an adult. So that means you're starting to learn about, you know, banking and finance, learning about a credit report or a credit score. You start learning about LLCs and business. You start learning about different career opportunities. And then maybe you want to establish and have a family and stuff like that. So whether you in the streets, or whether you was on some gang shit, everybody gonna start to think about these things at some point. A lot of my homeboys that play athletics, like sports and football, basketball and stuff, a lot of them went to college. Some of them went to professional. Like we had two guys a couple guys went to the NFL in high school. And then a couple of my homeboys, of course they played college basketball, and then they went on to play semi-professional basketball, like overseas and stuff like that. So the athlete crew, them guys was all right, because a lot of them, they stayed away from certain stuff in the streets that would get you in trouble. Whereas with myself, I'm trying to do the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde thing. So a lot of my athletic career, believe it or not, it was thwarted by my activities in the streets. And a lot of the coaches and stuff like that, they weren't really rocking with me when they saw how deep I was in that stuff. You know what I'm saying? And me thinking that just because I'm doing good at school, my grades are good, we having basketball tryouts and I'm dunking on everybody or whatever the case is. And then they saying, yeah, but that ain't good enough. Like, dude, you're a troublemaker. Like, your name coming up in too much stuff that we not cool with. So they weren't really fucking with me, when it came to playing deeper into high school basketball like I could have. But anyway, so now, your nerd guys and the gangsters, they in their 30s now, right? And what's happening is that the gangsters, they want to do the right thing. They may want to create a business. They may want to get in the entertainment industry. Like for myself, for example, I'm in the entertainment industry and I got into it basically through copyright publishing and accounting and doing administrative stuff on the back end. So this is what allowed me to get in the entertainment industry. And a lot of the guys from the streets, they want to get in the entertainment industry because the music in the entertainment industry, when it has that sauce, that seasoning salt that come from the streets, is typically bound to be successful at some point. So I will admit that if your music career has the edge of the streets associated with it, you are more likely to go farther in it. Just being honest with you. And you still have people that are just extremely talented and they'll make it. So you don't have to be from the streets. But I'm just saying, like, this is why y'all see this in the so-called Black American hip hop or rap world. If you from the streets, you already in alignment to really become something. Like, I'll give y'all another example. When I moved on to college, a lot of the OG guys in the Mafia and Hit Squad, a lot of them were able to go to the entertainment industry. So, for example, you had Bama and Smeezy. They started working with Young Jeezy and CTE. You had Bloody J. Bloody J started moving on, and he started working with, of course, YFN, Lucci, Rocco, and some of the other people in the inner city. And then, of course, you had Waka and Cap and Kibo. They was rapping with Gucci, and they had their Brick Squad, Monopoly, and stuff like that. So the streets and the hip hop thing has a relationship, and not everybody gonna transition into it, but some people will. And we had our own people. Of course, you know what I'm saying, coming from Amp Squad and 220 and the Mafia and stuff like that. He transitioned into the music industry now. So that's what started to happen, right? But what the problem started to kick in, where the street guys, you want to do something professional. You want to be in the corporate world now. You want to be in the big business world now. But they don't really know the etiquette. They don't really have the skill set. They don't have the communication skills. They don't have the reading comprehension skills. They don't have the arithmetic skills. They don't know about contracts. They don't know how to read about publishing. They don't know how to collect royalties. They don't know about accounting and taxes and stuff like that. They don't know how to get an EIN number. They don't know how to create the LLC. You know what I'm saying? So all these other things that are important, which were the root foundational skills you were given in elementary, middle, and high school, by the way. But because they didn't take it serious then, it's starting to bite them in the ass now that they're older. And guess what happens? Now the nerd gets his revenge, because that nerd went to college and graduated. So who do you all think are the accountants, the lawyers, the administrators, the executives, the publicists, the marketing people. Who do you think all those people are in the entertainment industry? Those were the nerds. Those are those grown up nerds that actually went to school, went to college. They were formally trained, formally educated in that stuff. And now that they're out, a lot of them work in the music industry. A lot of them know the YouTube. They know the Instagram. They know how to do the videography. They know how to do the editing and stuff like that. Because a lot of them actually have professional training of it. Like I said, they may have gone to a trade school. They may have gone to college or something like that. So they learned it the right way. They actually know how to do it. And they running the whole industry. All right. Think on YouTube right now. Like, for example, you got dudes like DJ Academics. I'm going to just use him for an example. Not to pick on him, but I'm going to just use him as an example. Like DJ Academics, he strikes me as Revenge of the Nerds. He strikes me as one of those young men that when he was probably in middle school, high school, early college, he saw the street niggas, having a heyday, getting all the women and doing this and doing that. And DJ Academics probably had to play the cut, or he had to play the bench. He had to play the sideline while they was winning, But now that we all are grown, DJ Academics probably went to college and he knows how to do the YouTube and he knows how to do the editing and he knows how to probably network with people and stuff like that. And that may be what helped him get into the entertainment industry and create a career for himself. So now what's happening is that all these bloggers on the internet that are talking about the drill stuff or the hip hop stuff and all that, majority of them dudes are coming from the nerd community. They're not coming from the street gang community, just being real with you. And they're successful at it. They making money off of it. They got monetized social media accounts, and they probably doing okay for themselves. Whereas, you do got certain street guys that I can tell that do the blogging thing that was really in the streets. You starting to see them rise up and do their thing, which is good. But a lot of them are starting to clean their appearance and behavior and their demeanor up. Like, they're not carrying themselves like just this guerrilla street guy. Like, no, they're not doing that. They're trying to carry themselves in more of a professional manner, and they're trying to have more professional business etiquette about themselves so they could be successful in what it is that they're trying to do. So that's the revenge of the nerds. The revenge of the nerds is that when the street guys grow up, that they gonna want to do some professional shit, but they ain't gonna have the skill set. So your nerd accountant, your nerd lawyer, your nerd publishing company, or whatever it is, like, they the ones really run your ass. They got you by the balls now. You know what I'm saying? And now the nerd gonna get his revenge. Now you need him. Now the street guy needs the nerd. The street guy never thought he was gonna need that nerd 20 years ago, when we may have been in middle school or high school. He never thought he was gonna need that nerd. Just like that nerd never thought that the street guy would need him. But that is exactly what has happened. And I'm seeing it now that we all in our 30s. And because like I said, because my personality dynamic allowed me to be in all those different worlds, I can really put it all together and see. And it's funny as shit to me. It is funny as shit. I'm going to just be real with you. It is. And I look at the so-called street guys like, man, like, y'all betted on the wrong horse that whole time. You know what I'm saying? I was telling you, like, hey, bro, you may want to start reading. Not knowing that one day, bro, you're going to get a co-publishing contract that's 30 pages. Or one day you're going to get a marketing contract that's 30 pages. And you're going to have some kind of a competence and comprehension skill set to understand what this shit says. Other than that, nigga, you finna sell your whole soul and life away. What, you finna just rely on an entertainment lawyer to tell you what that shit says, but you don't know none of it yourself? You just gonna rely on your accountant and give them power of attorney and have them paying all your bills and have them with the QuickBooks, they doing all the journal entries, they making all the balance sheets, all the income statements, and you don't know nothing? You know what I'm saying? Like, you may have a financial account, some of the royalties are coming in and they putting your money in a cash value long-term health insurance plan, or, they may be a Roth IRA or something like that. You don't know what none of that shit is. And you got to depend on that nerd to tell you everything. And like I say, and these nerds, they making money hand over fist on you niggas. Not only are they charging you the fee that you're supposed to pay for the service, but they overcharging you because they know your ass don't fucking know. How would you know? You don't know how to read a fucking publishing administration statement. You don't know what that is. You don't know how to create a good email with the right type of, like I say, subject verb agreement, the right kind of grammar, to send to a CEO of a company or to send to a paralegal representative of a company so you can make sure your money is right and stuff like that. You got to always call on a nerd. And then another thing too, the street niggas, they be so cool that they don't want to be a cameraman. They want to always be the one on the camera. They don't never want to hold a camera and film themselves. They don't never want to learn how to do basic edits on their own video. So they so, narcissistic and arrogant that they think that they got to be on the camera. Like, they don't want to hold the camera. They don't want to look like they not cool. So guess what? So now the nerd guy, now he going to come in and hold the camera. But guess what's going to happen though? After the film is done, he going to take it. He going to edit it the way he wants to edit it. He going to release it on whatever platform he releases it on. And now he's making the money. What you think? You gonna scare him into giving that shit back to you? That shit ain't gonna work. These nerd niggas gonna call the fucking police on y'all ass. As they should. As they should. They ain't finna be going back and forth with you. Like, go try something with DJ Academics and see what's gonna happen. That nigga gonna call the police on you, bro. He ain't finna go to do no street shit. And this is just facts. And this is when the nerd finally the gangster, he finally realizes, like, damn, I bet on the wrong horse. And now he trying to rehabilitate himself and tell young niggas to stay out the streets and all that. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, to me, it's paradoxical and it's funny. It's funny. And I'm gonna wrap the video up with the brother Casanova 2 times, from New York. He in the federal prison, but I saw he did an interview with Gillian Wallow. And, he was talking about a lot of different things, but he made a comment on basically that, I guess DJ Academics have been putting out, different little blogging videos and commenting on stuff in hip hop. And maybe DJ Academics made a couple of videos about Casanova, and Casanova didn't like the way, DJ Academics did the videos. But anyway, Casanova said he saw DJ Academics in person and kind of ran up on him. And DJ Academics basically was like, look, bro, I'm a blogger. Like, this is what I do. It's public information, X, Y, and Z, ABC. And Casanova admitted, he said it was at that point that he really realized, like, damn, like, them guys really are just blogging. And, it's a form of, like, public media. Like, that's how they making money and stuff like that. They not really picking on you or, you know what I'm saying, anything like that, or trying to start a beef with a gangster or nothing like that. Like, that's not what they doing. Like, they just putting out information, which y'all call it content creation. And Casanova realized that, but it probably took a lot of maturing for the brother Casanova to realize that, because see, he in the federal pen now. And once your ass get behind that wall, that's when you understand that shit. Then once you got that felony on your report card, that's when your ass understand it then. So I just wanted to put this out there, man, to provide some enlightenment on this phenomenon that exists. And until the so-called nerd and the so-called gangster figure out how to reconcile between the two in the so-called black community and figure out that we really need each other, then this shit gonna keep on happening the way it's happening. But y'all just think about that and, hit me up in the comment section. Tell me your thoughts and your opinions. And stay tuned. We out.